The wind was sharp like blades, cutting through the thick fog that covered the frozen valley. Villani stumbled forward, her arms shaking as she held her baby close to her chest. Behind her, a second child, barely 5, dragged his small feet through the snow, eyes half shut from cold and hunger. They had been walking for hours, maybe days. She had lost count. Her clothes were torn, her feet were bleeding, her strength was nearly gone. But she couldn't stop, not when her babies were still breathing. Villani was once the wife of a respected warrior. Her mate died in the last border war, shot down while protecting the tribe. She thought they would honor his name. Instead, they cursed her. In her world, a widow was seen as cursed, a sign of bad luck, a burden too heavy. The elders had told her to leave. "Take your spawn and go," one had spat, "before your misfortune poisons the rest of us." Without shelter, without food, without even a coat for her children. Just pain, snow, and silence. Now, the human outpost stood ahead, cold metal walls rising from the ground like a fortress. She didn't know if humans would help her. She only heard stories. Some called them monsters. Others called them protectors. She no longer cared which was true. Her children were dying. She had no more pride left. Her legs buckled. She fell to her knees, her baby letting out a soft cry. The older child whimpered and curled beside her. A human soldier stood on the wall above. He spotted her, then turned away. Another man pointed and laughed. Another beggar widow, "Let the snow have her." But someone else didn't walk away. Marcus, human soldier with dark eyes and a long scar across his face, paused at the sound of crying. He had heard many sounds in war, the screams of the dying, the blasts of weapons, but something about that tiny sound cut deeper. He walked past the mocking guards, down the steps, and through the front gate. Snow crunched under his boots. As he approached the crumpled figure, the wind pushed hard, but he didn't stop. Villani didn't look up at first. She thought it was another man come to kick her away. She held her baby tighter, ready to be struck, but no pain came. Instead, she felt something warm, a coat. Marcus removed his jacket and gently wrapped it around her trembling body. "You'll freeze out here," he said quietly. His voice was rough like gravel, but his hands were careful. Villani opened her eyes slowly. She stared at him in disbelief. "Why? Why help me?" she asked, barely able to speak. Marcus looked down at the boy, shivering beside her. "Because he's still breathing, but that means there's still hope." He lifted the baby into his arms. Villani flinched, afraid he would take the child away, but he held the baby like it was his own, carefully with care. Then he lifted her to her feet. She swayed, weak and unsure. "Walk with me," he said. Behind the gate, the other soldiers shouted, "Don't bring her in. She's not one of us." Marcus didn't stop. He kept moving, step by step, until they were inside the gates. Inside. The camp, warmth, hit her skin like a forgotten memory. The baby stopped crying. The boy clung to her, looking around with wide, frightened eyes. Marcus guided them into a supply tent. It was small, full of crates and gear, but it was warm and dry. "Stay here," he said. "I'll get food." Villani stared at the ground. Her hands trembled, her eyes filled with tears. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus didn't reply, simply nodded and left the tent. Outside, a group of soldiers watched him with frowns and whispers. "Risking everything for a stranger," one said. Marcus turned and answered, "No, I'm saving children." "That's not a risk. That's the right thing." Inside the tent, Villani fed her son a dry piece of bread Marcus had left. She held the baby close, rocking gently. For the first time in days, she didn't feel the cold. For the first time in weeks, she saw her son smile. She didn't know this human. She didn't know what would happen next. But tonight, her children would not die in the snow. Tonight, someone cared, and for that, she would never forget his face. Marcus stood outside the tent, arms crossed, staring at the soldiers who kept whispering behind his back. He knew what they were thinking. He had broken protocol. It brought an outsider into a human camp, a widow alien. But Marcus didn't care. Inside the tent, he had seen something that reminded him of old pain. A child too cold to cry, and a mother too weak to ask for help. He had seen that once before on Earth. Long ago, during one of the riots, a woman holding her dead baby, rocking it slowly. No one helped her then. He wasn't going to repeat that mistake. He pushed open the flap of the tent. Villani looked up quickly, her body tensed. Her baby was asleep on her lap, and her older son sat next to her, chewing slowly on a second piece of bread. "I brought water," Marcus said, placing a canister in front of her. Villani hesitated, then gave a slow nod. "Thank you," she whispered. Marcus sat down on a crate. Not too close, but not far either. "My name's Marcus," he said. "I'm not high rank, just a soldier." Villani clutched her baby tighter. "I'm Villani," she said, her voice soft but clear. "Why were you out there?" Marcus asked gently. "No one walks the frost valley unless they're running from something." Villani lowered her eyes. Her voice shook. "My husband. He died fighting in your war. My people said I bring death. They threw me out. They said my children would bring shame." Marcus blinked slowly. "They left you to die. Just because you're a widow?" Villani nodded. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. "That's not right. They said we were cursed," she added. "They said my children would steal food and bring sickness. They call us snow ghosts now. I had nowhere to go." Marcus's jaw clenched. He had seen many cultures. Some fought, some traded. But this abandoning a woman and her children, this was something worse than war. Not everyone in my camp agrees with what I did, he admitted. "Bringing you in, helping you, they think I'm a fool." Villani looked at him for the first time. Really looked. His face was hard, but not cruel. His hands were calloused, but his movements were always careful. "You're not a fool," she said. "You're the only one who looked at me like I was still alive." Marcus stood. "You'll need rest. You're safe here for now. But I'll have to hide you. The command finds out." Villani interrupted. "I don't want to bring you trouble." "You already did," Marcus smirked. "But I chose it." That night, Marcus brought blankets, more food, and a small heating lamp. The children finally slept in peace. But peace didn't last long. By morning, the commander called for Marcus. He entered the briefing room where cold faces sat behind a long desk. The room smelled like metal and coffee. "We know what you did," the officer said. Marcus stood tall. "I saved a family. You disobeyed protocol. That alien is not registered. She's not part of any peace group. She's undocumented. She's not our problem." Marcus's voice didn't shake. "She's a mother. Her children are freezing. We claim to be better than the galaxy. Let's act like it." "You will remove her," the commander ordered, "or you will be removed." Marcus didn't argue. He just turned and walked out, but his fists were tight and his blood was boiling. Back at the tent, Villani could tell something was wrong. "They want me gone?" she asked. Marcus nodded. "They gave me a choice. What will you do?" She whispered. "I'm choosing what's right," he said, lifting a crate and moving it aside. Beneath it was a hatch, a hidden storage tunnel used for fuel lines. "You'll hide here until I figure out what's next." Villani stared into the dark space. It was small and cold, but better than the outside. She looked at her children, sleeping softly for the first time. "Then I trust you," she said. Marcus helped her down the ladder, then covered the hatch with the crate again. He stood above it, guarding it with his silence. Outside, snow began to fall again, gently covering the camp in white. He knew this was only the beginning. If they found her, they'd take the kids, deport her, or worse. But Marcus had made a decision. He wouldn't let her go, not this time. Villani waited in the dark tunnel below the camp, her children curled against her, the small heater giving off a weak hum. The air was tight, but better than the biting cold outside. Above her, Marcus stood guard like a wall, listening for footsteps that might bring trouble. When night returned and the guards changed shifts,
Out.
Marcus gave the signal, 2 soft taps on the hatch. Villani pushed it open and climbed up quietly, her legs still sore from the long walk through the icelands. Marcus had warmed a bowl of soup over a small flame. He didn't say anything, just handed her the bowl and sat nearby, watching the tent flap as if danger could sneak in at any second. Villani sipped the soup slowly, the heat filling her chest, easing the ache in her belly. Then, without being asked, she began to speak. "My husband died in the war between your kind and mine," she said, her voice calm but empty. "He wasn't a soldier. He was a healer. He followed the battle to treat the wounded and never returned." Marcus looked at her quietly, giving her the space to go on. "They said it was my fault," she continued. "They said a woman who loses her mate brings darkness. First, they took our home. Then they stopped speaking to me. Even my sister wouldn't look at me." Her hands tightened around the warm bowl. "When the elders gave the order, no one stopped them, not even my father. They led me to the edge of the settlement and threw food in the snow like I was an animal." Marcus felt his stomach twist. He had seen cruelty before, in battles, in broken cities, in prisons, but this was different. This was quiet cruelty, dressed as tradition. Villani kept speaking. "I begged to stay for the sake of my children. I promised to leave once the storm passed. But they said if I stayed, they would leave instead. They feared death would follow us." She looked up, her eyes shining but not crying. "I carried both my children for 3 days. No water, no fire, just snow, wind, and silence. When I saw the human outpost in the distance, I thought maybe my last breath could be used to scream for help." Marcus finally spoke. "You didn't scream? I had no strength left," she whispered. "Only hope." They sat in silence for a moment. The wind outside pushed against the tent walls, but inside, something fragile was building. Not trust yet, but something close. "You don't have to tell me more," Marcus said. "You've been through enough." Lonnie looked at him, her voice steady. "I want you to know why I'm not afraid anymore. I've already lost everything. So if I lose this too, I lose nothing." Marcus stood and walked to the corner of the tent, pulling out a pack. He opened it and took out a data pad. "I've been checking the supply tunnels," he said. "There's a place where fuel used to be stored. It's dry now, hidden. You and your children can stay there until I can get you out of this base safely." Villani hesitated. "Why are you helping me like this?" Marcus looked over his shoulder. "Because I've watched too many people die when they should have lived. And because you're still fighting not for yourself, but for them." Lonnie nodded. Slowly, "You are different from others." "You're not the first to say that," he said, smiling suddenly. A soft knock came from outside. Marcus moved fast, hiding the soup, kicking the hatch closed, and nodding to Villani to stay silent. A female voice spoke from beyond the tent. "Human. Is it true you helped the widow?" Marcus opened the flap slightly. A second alien woman stood in the snow. Her skin was darker than Villani's, her arms bruised, her eyes swollen. Behind her stood a young girl, wrapped in torn cloth. Marcus stepped outside, closing the tent behind him. "Who told you?" he asked. "They whispered it in the trash zone," she replied. "They said a human showed mercy. I followed the wind to find you." Marcus looked around. "No patrols nearby. You can't stay here," he said. "Not now. Have nowhere else," the woman answered. He stared into her eyes. That same hollow pain was there, just like Villani's. Marcus sighed deeply and pointed to a storage crate. "Go around the corner. Knock 3 times. Someone will open the hatch. But be quiet. You're not alone down there." As she walked off with her daughter, Marcus returned to the tent. "There's another one," he said. Villani didn't. "Seemed surprised. There will be more." Marcus nodded. He looked at the hatch and whispered, "Then we make space." Marcus never meant to start a revolution, but it started with one mother, then another, and then 3 more within 2 days. They came in silence, through snow and wind, guided by whispered rumors. The human who helps widows. At first he thought it was a coincidence. Maybe Villani's case was a rare one. But when he opened the hatch again that morning, and saw 5 women huddled together. Children pressed to their sides, faces hollow and hungry. He knew it was something bigger. This wasn't mercy anymore. It was defiance. The fuel chamber beneath the outpost was tight and barely warm. But Villani had taken charge. She shared food fairly, used scraps to make beds, and calmed the little ones when they cried. Marcus brought down old blankets, expired rations. In water tanks he rerouted from cleaning stations. "You're building a village under our feet," whispered a technician who caught him sneaking into storage. Marcus only replied, "Then I'll make sure it doesn't fall." Villani had changed too. Her voice was stronger now. Her eyes stayed sharp, scanning the tunnel each time someone new arrived. She became something more than a refugee. She became a leader. Still, the danger was growing. Supply numbers started to mismatch. Crates counted didn't match logs. Someone reported hearing footsteps beneath the south wall. A patrol officer caught sight of a child's hand under a tarp. The whispers in the camp turned to suspicion. "Are we being watched?" Villani asked Marcus late one night, her arms cradling a sleeping girl who wasn't hers. "Yes," he answered. "And someone wants proof." That night, he moved fast. He ordered all the mothers and children to prepare for emergency exit. He had found an old shaft that led to the dry canal system, which could lead to a civilian area beyond the fence. "But if you do this," Villani said, "you may never be a soldier again." Marcus looked at her and replied, "Maybe I never was." Just as he began guiding them out, a drone flew overhead. Silent, small, a recon model. It hovered near the ventilation shaft and snapped a picture of a child's face. Marcus saw the red light blink and knew someone had seen everything. The next morning, the camp was on alert. Soldiers rushed around with rifles. At the gates were sealed. Officers questioned guards. Storage crates were ripped open and searched. Dogs sniffed for scent. A notice was posted outside the mess hall. Unauthorized sheltering of non-human life forms is a violation of Interspecies Code Section 12.3. Immediate reporting required. Marcus pretended to follow orders. He marched with the rest, checked buildings, and nodded during briefings. But inside he was counting the hours he had left. He ran to the hatch, opened it, and told Villani, "It's over. We need to move now." "But the children," she said. "The little ones are too cold to run." "We have no choice," Marcus said. "They found us." Villani didn't argue. She stood and shouted directions in her native tongue, quick and clear. The mothers gathered what little they had, a blanket, a cup, a toy made of wires, and followed. Marcus led them into the tunnel system, every step echoing like a drum. The youngest child cried once, and a mother quickly covered his mouth with a soft hand. Villani carried a sick girl on her back. Her legs shook, but she never slowed down. They moved like shadows through the underbelly of the outpost. But halfway to the exit, a sound stopped them. Boots, metal, voices. Soldiers had entered from the other side. Marcus's eyes met Villani's. She whispered, "There's no way out now." He turned and looked at a sealed maintenance room. "And here," he ordered, yanking the door open. It was narrow and full of rusted parts. But enough to hide. They crammed inside, all 22 of them. Breath held as footsteps grew louder outside. One soldier stopped near the door. "I swear I heard something," he muttered. Another laughed. "Probably a rat." "Come on, we're wasting time." The steps faded. Marcus waited 2 more minutes, then exhaled. Villani pressed her forehead against his arm and whispered, "You saved them again." "No," he replied. "Not yet." He peeked out and saw the path was clear. "We move fast now," he said. "If we wait, they'll seal the lower canals." The mothers nodded. One by one, they followed him into the darkness, no longer hiding, but escaping. And deep in that tunnel, Marcus realized something. He had stopped being a soldier. Of Earth, he had become something else. He had become hope. The alarm rang across the outpost like thunder, sharp, angry, full of panic. Red lights spun in the halls. Soldiers ran with weapons ready, their boots pounding against metal floors. The message was clear. Intruders had been spotted inside the restricted zone. But they weren't intruders. They were mothers and children, tired, cold and scared, hiding behind pipes and shadows. A small boy had dropped a broken spoon while running. A drone's audio picked up the sound. That was all it took. Now, the hunt had begun. Marcus stood between the steel door and the tunnel, his arms wide, his jaw tight. Behind him, Villani held her son close, while another widow rocked a crying baby. The air was filled with fear, but no one screamed. They trusted Marcus. The door burst open, and 6 soldiers rushed in. "Step aside, Sergeant," the lead officer barked. "You are ordered to surrender all unauthorized aliens." Marcus didn't move. His voice came out steady. "They're not enemies. They're families. They haven't hurt anyone." "That's not the point," the officer snapped. "You're disobeying direct orders. Move now, or face charges of treason." One of the soldiers raised his weapon. The others followed. Villani gasped. She didn't know what treason meant in human law. She knew what guns meant. Death still. Marcus didn't step back. "If you want to get to them," he said, locking eyes with the officer, "you'll have to shoot through me." The room went silent. The soldier's hands tightened around the rifle. Then a voice came from behind. "Lower your weapons," said a calm, sharp tone. Everyone turned. A woman in a sleek black uniform stepped forward, Colonel Janice Reeve, head of operations for the region. She walked straight to Marcus, eyes cold, unreadable. "You've caused quite a mess, Sergeant," she said. Marcus stood tall. "I did what was right." She looked past him at the mothers and children. "I count 22 unregistered aliens." "That's 22 violations," she said. "Explain why I shouldn't have you stripped of rank right now, so I'm not the only one who knows," Marcus replied. "And soon the whole world will." He reached into his vest and pulled out a small recorder. He tapped it once, and it began to play quiet at first. Then louder. Villani's voice came through, soft but strong. "They called me a curse, but this human, he called me alive." Then another voice, a widow speaking in a different dialect, translated by AI. "He fed my baby when I couldn't feed myself." One by one, the voices continued. Stories of pain, abandonment, and survival. All recorded by Marcus in secret. Reeve stared at the device. Round her, the soldiers stood frozen. "I've already sent copies to 3 civilian stations," Marcus added. "If you arrest me, this becomes a story. If you shoot us, it becomes history." Reeve's jaw tightened. "You've planned this." "No," Marcus said. "I hoped it wouldn't come to this." Reeve turned and walked slowly across the room. She stood in front of Villani and stared into her eyes. "You speak basic now?" Villani nodded. "Do you want to be here?" Villani answered without fear. "No one else wanted us?" He did. Reeve looked around the room at the pale faces. The children holding each other, the quiet strength of women who had been through more than anyone should. Something shifted in her expression, not softness, but calculation. "This isn't over," she said, then turned to Marcus. "You've placed us in a very difficult position." Marcus didn't blink. "Then make a better choice." Reeve gave a single nod. "The council will want a statement. Till then, they stay here, under guard, but unharmed." She turned and left. The soldiers followed. Marcus dropped to one knee as the door closed. His legs had stopped shaking, but his chest was tight. Villani crouched beside him. "You could have been killed." "I still could," he said with a tired smile. "You shouldn't have done this for us," she whispered. Marcus looked at her, eyes steady. "But I did." He stood up and faced the children. "They're safe for now," he said, "but we're not finished. We tell the truth. All of it." Villani nodded. "Then I will speak to us." That night, with a flashlight and a cracked tablet, Marcus recorded her story, every word, every detail, because saving lives wasn't enough anymore. Now they had to change the world. The courtroom was colder than the frost outside, not because of weather, but because of silence. Heavy, sharp silence. Every seat was filled. Soldiers, council leaders, translators. Even news drones hovered above like mechanical insects. Villani stood in the center, dressed in simple robes. Her children sat behind her, watched by 2 guards, but not in chains. She didn't shake. She didn't cry. Not anymore. She had seen too much, survived too much. To fear a room full of strangers, beside her stood Marcus, no longer wearing his uniform. His badge had been taken, his name stripped from the camp roster, but he stood straight. He hadn't lost his purpose. The lead counselor, a tall man with silver skin and narrow eyes, tapped the microphone. "You have been brought here under emergency review," he said. "Not as a criminal, but as a question." Villani raised an eyebrow. The counselor continued. "What happened in Camp H-17 has forced us to face an uncomfortable truth. Does our law protect the living, or only the documented?" Another council member, a human woman, spoke up. "You were given no invitation to Earth's space. You were not registered. Yet Sergeant Marcus risked his career for you. You want to understand why?" Villani stepped forward, her voice clear. "Because he saw a mother, not a rule." Murmurs rose in the gallery. "I did not come to your world by choice," she said. "I was pushed here by silence. My own people left me. Your people nearly did the same. But one man knelt in the snow, not with power, but with kindness." She pointed to Marcus. "He didn't ask where I came from. He asked if my child was breathing." The counselor frowned. "And what of our laws? We cannot have soldiers." Deciding who to save based on feeling, Marcus stepped forward. "Then rewrite your laws." Gasps filled the room. Marcus continued, "Because if your rules say I should have watched her freeze, then your rules are broken." The silver-skinned counselor stood. "You are bold, soldier." "I'm not a soldier anymore," Marcus replied. "I'm a witness." He pulled out a small holodisc and pressed it. The air filled with light. Images hovered above the council mothers holding children. Little ones with frostbite, Villani feeding 3 hungry babies not her own. Then came the voices. The same ones from the recordings. Not just Villani now, but others. Women who had been thrown away, now speaking for the first time. One said, "We begged for shelter. Only the human listened." Another said, "They said we were broken, but he treated us like we mattered." A third, younger voice said softly, "I thought the snow would take my brother, but the warm man came." The gallery went silent. Even the judges had no words. Villani looked around the chamber, her voice lowered. "You speak of peace, of unity. But if a widow and her children have no place in your peace, then your unity is empty." One counselor leaned forward. "What do you want, Villani?" She didn't blink. "I want others to live." Marcus stepped beside her. "Give them a chance. Don't send them back. Let them stay. Let them rebuild. Or if not for them, then do. If for yourselves, to prove we are not the same as those who turn away." A long pause followed. Then the counselor tapped his pad. The screen flashed blue. "We will vote." Behind the wall, numbers appeared as names blinked, one by one. Green lights lit up. Yes. 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 Only to read. The decision was made. The counselor stood. "The council agrees to grant protected status to Villani and all others in her care. There. Children will receive education, food, and medical treatment. Sergeant Marcus, your actions are forgiven, but not forgotten. You will not return to service, but your name will not be erased." Cheers burst from the gallery. Marcus let out a breath he didn't know he was holding. Villani turned, her children rushing into her arms. For the first time, her son laughed, not from relief, but from joy. As they walked out of the chamber, reporters ran forward. "What will you do now?" Marcus looked at V. "Lonnie," she smiled. "We start again." They called it New Hearth, a small village just beyond the old human outpost, built on quiet land that once held nothing but snow and stone. Now it held life, real life. Smoke curled from chimney pipes. Children's laughter bounced off wood walls. Lanterns glowed outside each home, not to chase away darkness, but to welcome those still lost in it. At the center stood a house with a broken fence, and a garden that hadn't yet grown. Inside, Villani stirred soup in a clay pot, her daughter, wrapping vines around her arm like bracelets while her son ran outside with 3 other children, laughing as snow fell around them. The house was small, but it was safe. It had no locks on the door, because for the first time, they had nothing left to fear. Marcus had not stayed at the military camp after the council decision. He walked away without looking back. He didn't want medals. He didn't want to stand behind walls ever again. He built the first home in New Hearth with his own hands. It had taken weeks of work, broken nails, sore muscles, and quiet evenings beside a fire where Villani taught him her language, and he taught her how to build furniture. From scrap wood, they weren't lovers. They weren't married. Their bond was something harder to explain, to broken pieces that somehow made a whole. That morning, a messenger drone arrived from the Human Council. It hovered outside the door, blinking blue. Marcus stepped out, tapped its screen, and listened. The Intergalactic Relief Fund has approved a grant for New Hearth. Construction will expand. More refugee families are on their way, and they've chosen someone to lead it. Marcus raised an eyebrow. Who? The drone beeped. Marcus Hale, founder, builder, guardian. Villani walked outside, drying her hands on a cloth. Another title. She smiled. I don't want it, he said, watching the snow. But you earned it, she replied. That evening, they gathered around the fire pit in the center of the village. Dozens of mothers stood around him, each holding a child, each face once full of fear, now filled with light. Some had marks on their skin from old beatings, some had scars no one could see, but all of them looked at Marcus like he was more than human, like he was something sacred. One young girl, not more than 7, tugged on his coat. Are you the warm man? Marcus knelt down. That's what they call me. She nodded. You made my mom smile again. He ruffled her hair gently. Then I'm glad. Later that night, Villani stepped outside her house and looked up at the stars. The wind was soft, the kind that no longer threatened, but whispered. She turned and saw Marcus sitting near the fence, carving something from wood. Come inside, she said. The stew is almost ready. I'm fine here, he replied, though his fingers were numb. Villani walked up behind him and placed her hand on his shoulder. I know you never asked for this, she said softly, but we would not have survived. Without you, I couldn't leave you, he said, even when everyone else did. Villani knelt beside him. I want to ask something, she said. He turned toward her. She took a breath. My people believe in something called a bond hearth. When someone saves your family, when someone gives you new life, that person becomes part of your fire. They can choose to accept or walk away. No pressure, no promise. Just ... place. Marcus was silent. Villani didn't move. He looked into her eyes, then looked toward the village lights glowing, smoke curling, children playing. I never had a place before, he said. Then stay, she whispered. Not as a soldier, not as a savior, just as someone who belongs. Marcus nodded once, slowly. I'll stay, he said. I'll help others find their fire too. That night, the wind passed over New Hearth like a song, quiet and kind, and in a village built by outcasts, where laws had failed and kindness had survived, a human and a widow shared warmth, not because they had to, but because they chose to. Together, they had created something no council could command, and no war could destroy. A future.